Welcome to Threads of Truth, the podcast where real-life mysteries meet internet speculation. Today, we're going to unpack a deeply unsettling case that has baffled investigators and haunted a family for over 4 decades. The disappearance of 2-year-old Katrice Lee from a British military base in West Germany. Okay, so let's set the scene. Picture this. It's a busy Saturday morning, November 28th, 1981.
Right.
And we're inside an A5 shopping complex that's in Schloss Neuhaus, right near the British Army base in Paderborn, West Germany.
For anyone maybe not familiar, the NA5 Navy, Army, and Air Force Institutes, they run shops for British military families stationed abroad. It's meant to be a familiar spot.
Exactly, a little piece of home. And this wasn't just any Saturday. It was Katrice Lee's second birthday.
Her actual second birthday.
Yes. Her mom, Sharon, and her aunt were there just grabbing some last-minute bits for her party, crisps, maybe some treats. You can imagine the atmosphere. Probably quite cheerful, other families around.
A place that should feel completely safe.
Absolutely. It's a British military base environment.
Yeah.
You expect security, a certain level of control. It's designed to be a haven, really, especially when you're so far from the UK.
Mm.
But then, in just a moment, everything changes.
Mm-hmm.
Sharon, her mom, she puts Katrice down for literally a second. Turns to get a bag of crisps off a shelf.
Yeah.
Just a normal, everyday thing you do when shopping.
It happens all the time.
And when she turns back, and we're talking seconds here, Katrice is gone. Vanished from a crowded supermarket on a military base. The shock must have been, well, unimaginable.
Instantly.
The massive search kicks off straight away, that cheerful buzz just turning into panic.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing, no trace of her was found. And that was the start, the beginning of this awful, frustrating mystery that's just gone on and on.
And what's so immediately striking about that moment, that vanishing, is how wrong it feels for the environment.
Right.
It's not like she wandered off in a park. This is a contained space. Busy, yes, but indoors, supervised. For a 2-year-old to disappear that completely, that fast, it just screams that something isn't right.
Mm-hmm. It immediately suggests something more than just wandering off.
Exactly. It points away from a simple accident scenario almost instantly. The speed, the completeness of it, it immediately brings the whole idea of security into question. How could this happen here?
Yeah, how? That's the question that hangs over everything from the very first second. So let's talk a bit about Katrice herself and what happened right after she vanished.
Okay.
She was born November 28th, 1979. So like we said, exactly 2 on the day. She had some really distinctive features, too, which you'd think would be crucial.
Yes, things that should have made her stand out.
Curly, light brown hair, brown eyes, but also a very noticeable squint in her left eye. And she had a pink birthmark on her back.
Significant markers, not subtle things.
Not at all. And her dad, Richard Lee, he was a sergeant major in the British Army, stationed right there at Paderborn. So this is a military family living that life abroad.
Which adds another layer to it all.
You can only try to grasp the impact. On the family, obviously, but also on that whole community. They're far from home, relying on each other, and then this happens in their safe space.
Yeah.
It's been over 40 years, and that wound is still wide open for them. They just want answers.
And that military context is so important here. It wasn't just a local police matter, because it happened on or right next to the base. The primary jurisdiction fell to the Royal Military Police, the RMP.
The Army's own police force.
Right. Now, the German civil police were involved too, naturally, given the location in West Germany. But this immediately creates potential friction, or at least complexity.
Dual jurisdiction. Yeah. Sounds like it could get messy.
It can. Think about sharing information, coordinating searches, interviewing witnesses who might be military personnel versus German civilians. Who takes the lead? Who has access where? It can slow things down, create bureaucratic hurdles right when speed is absolutely essential.
And unfortunately, slow seems to be the word for that initial response.
Yeah.
It looks like there were some really serious failures right from the start.
Yes, sadly. The criticism of the initial investigation is quite significant, and it points to some fundamental errors.
Like what? What went wrong in those first crucial hours?
Well, perhaps the biggest, most glaring failure was the lack of containment. Critically, no roadblocks were set up around the base or the shopping complex immediately after she was reported missing.
No roadblocks. A child vanishes from a supermarket on a base, and they don't lock down the exits.
Apparently not immediately, which means anyone Someone who took her, someone who saw something, could potentially have just driven off the base or away from the area without being stopped or questioned.
That's astounding. That feels like rule number one, secure the perimeter.
It's basic procedure in a potential abduction scenario, especially involving a child. You try to contain the area immediately. Not doing so leaves a massive, potentially crucial window open for someone to escape. It fundamentally undermines the search before it even properly begins.
You're immediately playing catch up.
Exactly. And the clock is ticking louder and louder, especially with a 2-year-old. Those first few hours, the golden hours as they're called, are absolutely critical. Failing to secure the area is a catastrophic first step.
And the delays didn't stop there, did they?
No, it wasn't just the lack of roadblocks. Take sniffer dogs, for instance. A key tool in searching for a missing person.
Right, you'd want them there ASAP to pick up a scent trail.
You would, but it took a full 24 hours to deploy them.
24 hours, a whole day later.
A whole day. Think about a busy supermarket, the car park, the surrounding area. How many scents, how much foot traffic in 24 hours? The chance of a dog picking up a reliable trail diminishes rapidly with that kind of delay and contamination.
So that crucial tool was basically rendered much less effective.
Significantly less effective, yes. It's hard to understand the thinking behind that kind of delay. Whether it was lack of resources, poor communication, or just not grasping the urgency. Whatever the reason, it was another massive missed opportunity.
It's like they weren't treating it with the urgency it demanded.
It certainly appears that way from the outside, looking back at the documented response.
And then there's the issue with witnesses, people who were actually in the NAFI when Katrice disappeared.
Yes, the staff working there, maybe other shoppers who were nearby.
When were they interviewed?
This is perhaps one of the most shocking delays. Key staff members of the NFI weren't formally interviewed until 6 weeks after Katrice vanished.
So did you say 6 weeks?
6 weeks, yes.
I don't even know what to say to that. What possible value could a detailed memory have after 6 weeks of routine daily life?
Precisely. Human memory fades incredibly quickly. Details blur, get confused, or are forgotten entirely. To wait that long to speak to people who were present at the critical moment, it's an almost unbelievable failing in basic investigative practice.
Any chance of getting accurate, immediate recollections was just gone, lost.
Pretty much. It leaves huge gaps in understanding exactly what happened in those moments, who was where, what they saw or didn't see. It's a fundamental flaw.
And add to that, those unique physical details, the squint, the birthmark, were they widely publicized straight away?
No, astonishingly, they weren't. Those key identifiers, the things that could have made someone, anyone, spot her if she had been taken, or even if she had somehow wandered further afield, they weren't shared with the public immediately.
Why not? That seems like the most obvious thing to do. Plaster those details everywhere.
It's baffling. It hindered any chance of the public helping, of someone recognizing her. You have these very specific markers and you don't use them in your public appeals. It cuts off a huge potential source of information. Another critical oversight.
So no roadblocks, delayed dogs, witnesses interviewed weeks later, key details not shared. It's just one thing after another.
And on top of those procedural failures, there were other factors. There was no CCTV in the NAA back in 1981.
Right. That makes it harder. No objective record.
Exactly. You're totally reliant on witness memory, which, as we've just discussed, was compromised by the delay in interviewing, and the scene itself, the supermarket. It wasn't treated as a potential crime scene immediately.
Meaning?
Meaning it wasn't cordoned off. People kept shopping, coming and going.
So, potentially destroying any trace evidence. Fingerprints, fibers, anything.
Potentially, yes. Contaminating the area, obscuring any subtle clues that might have been left. It's like the foundations of the investigation were crumbling from the very start.
Given all that,
Yeah.
that catalog of errors,
Yeah.
it's maybe not surprising that the initial official theory seems, well, convenient.
You're talking about the riverlet theory.
Yeah. The RMP and the German police, they quickly settled on the idea that Katrice must have just wandered off on her own, somehow found her way to the nearby river lip, fallen in, and drowned.
That became the prevailing narrative pushed by the authorities early on.
But was there any evidence for it at all?
That's the crux of the issue. No, there was absolutely no physical evidence found to support it. Her body was never recovered from the river, despite searches. No items of her clothing were found near the banks or in the water. No footprints, no signs of disturbance. Nothing.
Yet they pushed that theory.
They did. It was presented as the most likely scenario, despite the complete lack of corroboration. It feels like an attempt to provide an explanation, maybe the simplest one, rather than confront the possibility of something more sinister, which they perhaps weren't equipped or prepared to investigate properly at that moment.
Especially given the location, a military base. Maybe an abduction felt too problematic.
That's certainly a line of speculation. The drowning theory, however unlikely without evidence, closes the case neatly if you accept it. An abduction opens up a whole host of other, more complex and potentially damaging questions.
And the family never bought the drowning theory, did they?
Not for a second. They and many others looking at the facts firmly believe she was abducted.
And their reasoning makes sense.
It does. Katrice didn't speak German. She was in a foreign country. If she'd wandered off, surely someone would have noticed this little English girl. Plus, she had that eye condition, the squint, which might have needed attention.
Things that make her stand out, maybe even make her a target for someone looking for a child for specific awful reasons.
That's the family's fear, and a plausible element of the abduction theory. They felt it was impossible for her to wander from a busy shop, navigate to a river, and vanish so utterly without anyone seeing anything and without leaving a single trace behind. Their gut feeling, their knowledge of their daughter screamed human intervention.
It just feels far more likely given the circumstances and the lack of any evidence for an accident.
The suddenness, the completeness of the disappearance from a supervised, crowded location points much more strongly towards abduction than a tragic, unwitnessed wandering off and drowning.
Decades passed with this uncertainty hanging over them, but then, much later, the case was looked at again.
Yes, thankfully. In 2012, the Royal Military Police reopened the case. A new investigation team took it on.
And they acknowledged the past mistakes.
They did, quite significantly. They issued a formal apology to the Lee family for the failings of that original 1981 investigation.
That must have been, well, validating, but also incredibly painful to hear officially after so long.
Absolutely. Acknowledging the errors was a huge step. And this new team didn't just apologize, they got to work. They conducted new forensic analysis where possible, re-examined old files, and actually identified some new leads.
Like the EFIT.
Exactly. They released an EFIT, a computer-generated image based on witness descriptions, of a man seen in the NAFI around the time Katrice disappeared. Someone considered a person of interest.
So a definite shift away from the drowning theory towards a potential suspect.
A very clear shift. It offered a tangible focus, a potential breakthrough after decades of essentially nothing concrete.
And this renewed focus led to more action. I remember hearing about a river search much more recently.
Yes, in 2018, based on some reanalyzed evidence, though the specifics weren't made public, a section of the River bank in Paderborn, slightly different location, but nearby, became an area of interest again.
So they went back to the water.
They did, but with a much larger, more systematic effort. Around 100 soldiers were involved in a 5-week excavation and search of that specific riverbank area.
Trying to definitively rule it out or hoping to find something missed decades ago.
Precisely. It was an exhaustive search using modern techniques. But unfortunately,
Nothing was found.
no trace of Katrice was found. Another painful dead end for the family after hopes were raised again.
And where does the investigation stand now?
In 2022, the case was formally handed over to a relatively new organization, the Defense Serious Crime Unit. They now have primacy, meaning they lead the investigation.
So it's still active, under a new specialized unit.
Yes, it indicates a continued commitment at an institutional level to try and find answers even after all this time. But the challenges obviously remain immense.
Of course. And with cases like this, especially ones with so many questions and official shortcomings, the internet inevitably fills the void with theories.
Oh, absolutely. Online forums, true crime communities, they dissect these cases intensely. People try to piece together what the official investigation perhaps couldn't or wouldn't.
Let's walk through some of those dominant theories that you see online. The drowning one first, is that still debated?
It's discussed, but mostly to be dismissed now. While it was the initial police line, the overwhelming consensus online, reflecting the views of the family and later investigators, is that it's just not credible.
Because of the lack of evidence.
Primarily, no body, no clothes, no trace after multiple searches. People online often point out the logistics. How does a 2-year-old get to the river unseen, fall in, and vanish entirely? It just doesn't add up. The physics, the probabilities, it's seen as almost impossible for there to be zero trace.
Okay, so if not drowning, then abduction. What are the main strands there? You mentioned the on-base abduction idea.
Right. This theory suggests the perpetrator was someone with legitimate access to the base, military personnel, a civilian worker, maybe a family member living there.
The thinking being it's easier to operate, maybe less suspicious if you belong there.
Exactly. You know, the layout, the routines, you might not raise alarm bells moving around. It narrows the suspect pool, in theory, to the base community. Online discussions sometimes delve into who was stationed there, any suspicious behavior noted at the time, that sort of thing.
It's a chilling thought, the threat coming from within that supposedly safe community.
It really is. It implies a breach of trust at the deepest level. Someone using their access, their position within that secure environment to commit this crime, it adds a layer of betrayal to the tragedy.
Alternatively, there's the off-base kidnap theory.
This one suggests the opposite, that maybe the abductor wasn't military and they got Katrice off the base very quickly.
Capitalizing on that lack of immediate roadblocks.
Precisely. The necktie wasn't deep inside the base, it was accessible. If someone acted fast, they could have potentially driven her out through the gates before any alert was properly raised or containment established.
Into the wider German community, making her much harder to find.
Yes. This could have been an opportunistic crime by someone local or someone just passing through who saw a chance and took it. The proximity to the town of Paderborn makes this plausible. They could melt away relatively easily.
Both abduction theories seem plausible, given the initial failings.
They do. And then there's the broader, less specific foul play theory, which basically just says, look, she didn't drown, she didn't wander off and survive. Somehow someone deliberately caused her disappearance.
It covers all abduction possibilities, really.
Yes, whether by someone on base, off base, opportunistic, planned, it's the strong intuition that human agency was involved. But the problem, as always,
No body, no confession, no definitive proof.
exactly. It remains the most likely category of explanation, but incredibly hard to prove definitively after all this time without new concrete evidence.
Which leads to maybe the most uncomfortable theory, especially given the context, the institutional cover-up idea.
Yes. This one is fueled directly by that long list of initial failures we discussed.
The lack of roadblocks, the delayed dogs in interviews, not publicizing the key details.
When you stack up that many significant errors, people start to wonder if it was just incompetence or if there was something more deliberate at play. Was there a reluctance to investigate thoroughly because it might reflect badly on the military, especially on foreign soil?
A desire to contain the situation, manage the potential scandal.
That's the core of the speculation, that perhaps protecting the institution's reputation or avoiding difficult questions about base security somehow interfered with or compromised the investigation from the start. It suggests the truth might have been inconvenient.
It's a serious allegation, but you can see how people arrive at it, looking at the timeline of failures.
You can. It speaks to a deep mistrust that can arise when institutions aren't transparent, especially in the face of tragedy and perceived incompetence. The family themselves have certainly voiced concerns along these lines over the years.
Amidst all this darkness, though, there's that persistent hope you mentioned, the still alive hypothesis.
Yes, and this is often tied to the abduction theories. The idea that Katrice wasn't harmed, but perhaps taken to be raised by someone else, maybe sold or given away into an illegal adoption scenario.
And the age-progressed images feed into this hope.
They do, releasing images of what Katrice might look like now as an adult, alongside TV appeals like those on Crime Watch in the UK. It's all aimed at potentially reaching her, or someone who knows her, wherever she might be.
It keeps the possibility alive that she's out there living her life, maybe with no idea of her true identity.
It's a heartbreaking thought, but also the one thread of hope the family clings to. That one day, perhaps through DNA, or someone recognizing an image or a story, she might be found. Modern technology does offer possibilities that didn't exist years ago.
So pulling it all together, the analysis seems to point squarely back at those initial critical flaws.
Without a doubt, the failure to secure the scene, the delays in deploying resources, the failure to interview witnesses promptly or publicize key details, these weren't just minor mistakes. They were fundamental errors with devastating, long-lasting consequences.
They essentially set the investigation up to fail.
In many ways, yes. It created a situation where finding the truth became exponentially harder with every passing hour, day, and week. Those early mistakes compromised the integrity of the evidence and the timeline almost beyond repair.
It really shows how crucial that immediate response is. You don't get a second chance at those first moments.
You don't. And the impact of a botched initial investigation ripples through decades, making a cold case like this incredibly difficult, perhaps even impossible to solve definitively.
And throughout this entire time, you have Katrice's father, Richard Lee, fighting relentlessly.
His dedication has been extraordinary. A former sergeant major himself, he spent over 40 years campaigning, lobbying politicians, doing media appearances, returning to Germany, constantly pushing for answers and keeping Katrice's memory alive.
His fight really highlights the human cost, the parental determination in the face of official failings and endless waiting.
It's a powerful testament to a father's love and refusal to give up. But it also underscores the tragedy, the fact that so much of the burden for keeping the case alive has fallen on the family, precisely because the initial response was so inadequate. His fight is, in many ways, a fight against the system that failed his daughter.
And that system, the military jurisdiction, adds that extra layer of complexity we touched on.
Yes, operating within military protocols on foreign soil, potentially prioritizing internal procedures or image over immediate open investigation. It creates unique challenges. It feeds into those perceptions of insularity or even cover-up, whether justified or not.
It complicates communication, accountability.
All of it. It makes an already difficult situation potentially much harder to navigate, both for investigators and for the families seeking transparency.
So the threads of truth here are, well, they're incredibly tangled. You've got the official drowning theory, widely dismissed but never formally retracted, perhaps. You've got strong belief in an abduction, but no proof. You've got systemic failures acknowledged decades too late.
It's a heartbreaking mosaic of unanswered questions, missed opportunities, and enduring pain. The initial mishandling seems to have cast such a long shadow that finding definitive answers now feels almost insurmountable.
It really is a stark reminder of a parent's worst nightmare, compounded by institutional failure. The truth feels lost to time and bureaucracy.
It does. It leaves you with a profound sense of injustice for Katrice and her family, a sense that the system in those critical early moments fundamentally failed them.
The disappearance of Katrice Lee is a mystery that has lingered for over 40 years. A child vanishes from a place that should have been safe. A police investigation is bungled, and a family is left with a lifetime of pain and questions. The threads of truth in this case are tangled in a web of bureaucracy, a perceived code of silence, and a central question that has never been answered. What really happened to Katrice? The truth may be forever lost, but her story and her father's relentless fight for answers will never be forgotten. This case prompts us to consider the profound responsibility of institutions and the enduring, devastating impact of a missing child on a family and a community. Next time, we examine the controversial case of Kendrick Johnson, a teenager found inside a rolled-up gym mat. Was it a freak accident or something far darker? Join us then as we continue to explore these tangled threads.